This podcast was recorded on Gadigal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders both past and present. Always was, always will be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4.
Yay, 4.
Episode 4 of My Mom's a Sex Therapist.
Go us.
My name is Claude, they, them, and this is my lovely mother, Jacqueline, she,
Hello.
her.
I am the sex therapist.
We have 4 episodes now.
Well, not yet. We've only started this one.
We have 3 episodes now.
3 and a bit.
Yeah. It's very cool.
It is.
It's very exciting.
It is.
Getting into the flow,
Yay.
the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
So how has your week been?
My week has been very good, very full, lots of good things happening.
Was there anything particularly erotic this week?
Anything erotic in my life? Yes. Yes. So I'm thinking of a particularly lovely experience.
Mm.
And that was filming the Sensual short film that I am doing. I think I may have mentioned it on here before.
Yeah, last episode.
Yeah. With a cinematographer friend of mine who was inspired by a sublimely sensual moment on the tango floor and wanted to turn it into a short film. So we've been working on that for a while. We've been doing some shoots and it's been really fantastic. But we were a little bit lost as to what actually was the story. So I did a deep meditation, which I am wont to do. I go into a sort of like almost like a trance and I ask for the download. And bang, it came to me, the whole start, the middle, the finish.
Cool.
And he thought it was amazing. So we did some more shoots, 2 more shoots to fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
What's so erotic about it though is, and this actually ties in with my own personal erotic theme. We all have different erotic themes,
Okay.
different things that turn us on. And I think I mentioned last time, when I was helping out on that erotic shoot for someone else, that I'm not a voyeur. Like, I don't find looking at sexual stuff particularly arousing for me. Yeah. But being watched, that is a totally different experience. And for me, like having the camera, being seen through the camera, oh my God, it really is very arousing.
Do you think that's become more arousing since you saw it through the camera last time?
Good question. No.
It's always been like this.
Yes.
The performance element.
Look, it's not even performance because I'm not performing. I'm being natural. Right. So just be careful. When we talk about being seen, we're not talking about you performing. Like performing a role that you think you should be doing sexually is not good.
Yeah.
But when you are authentically being yourself and you are being seen and you find that erotic, then yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're authentically expressing yourself and you get turned on by being seen, that's a healthy expression of sexuality. Although in this case, we weren't being sexual per se, we were being sensual.
Yeah.
And as you know, those who are regular listeners, when we talk about erotic, it is so much more than just what our genitals are doing. It's really feeling into in life. That's mine.
Cool.
What about
Very
you?
good.
How's your week
Learning.
been? And what's your most erotic moment that you wish to share with the world?
My week's been a bit up and down. But my most erotic moment was I have acquired an ADHD coach and he was asking me about what I like to do in my life and swimming just kept coming up. So why don't you go swimming? Sounds like you really like swimming. And I was like, whoa, such a good idea. Yeah.
Who'd have thought? Do something you really love in life.
And so I was feeling a bit sad and low. And then I went to the beach and I was there by myself and the water was crystal clear and it was a beautiful day and there were lots of different types of people also enjoying the bright sun and the clear waters. It was just really nice. I like I find salt water is more cleansing than natural water. It feels like it's actually washing away all my negative energy.
Well, it does because the pH is different and all the salts and stuff are actually more cleansing than just pure clear water.
Oh.
Yeah.
I really am a learner for life.
Mm.
Hence.
Yeah.
And I also feel like the waves like hit me in the face
Mm.
and they would like wash it all out of my brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really nice. Just being sad before the ocean, going into the ocean and being like, haha, I like being alive again. And then coming out of the ocean just like, phew,
Yes. And
everything's-
the ocean is feminine. So what you're doing is you're deeply immersing yourself into the feminine and being healed, because like healing and cleansing is a more feminine, I don't mean female,
Yeah.
yin yang, feminine, masculine activity. So you're just really immersing yourself into the universal divine feminine and being cleansed. It's nice, isn't it? Beautiful. Yay! Yay! Do what you love in life. It's healing,
Yeah.
rejuvenating, inspiring. Yes.
Punched in the face by the waves. Exactly.
Yes.
So what are we going to be teaching our beautiful listeners about? Oh my God, wait.
What?
Got to say last episode, but I think I've come up with a name for the listeners.
Oh, what's the name for the listeners?
So I was talking to my friend the other day about the podcast, and she was like, "Yeah, I loved it." Most people do, anyway.
Of course.
And she was like, "You have a lover of life," and I was like, "We could call our listeners the lovers, the lovers of life."
Yay! Hey, lovers of life. Love
You like that?
lifers. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. But more importantly, do you love it? Does that resonate?
Yeah,
Oh,
tell
lovers
us.
of life.
Tell us, little lovers.
Love, love, love.
Love it.
I love it too.
Okay.
Do the lovers love it?
So
We will hear from you.
What are we going to teach the little lovers about today?
Well, I think it came up in the last episode about the history of sex.
Mm-hmm. How we got to where we are today.
Yes, indeed.
How the linear approach
Yes.
was made.
How we ended up with a pretty dysfunctional view and concept around sex in our society. Why? Seriously, it's pretty fucked up. How did
Awesome.
that happen? Something natural and beautiful.
Context.
All right. So shall we go right back
Everyone,
to the beginning?
put your fucking listening hats on.
Once upon a time.
Seriously though, it's going to be content heavy and
Yeah.
it's really valuable. So just
Yes.
secure them.
Yes. So we are mammals. And like other mammals, we give birth. We gestate inside the mother and we give birth, and then our young suckle until they wander off on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for most mammals, right, that suckling and letting them wander off on their own doesn't take very long.
Yeah.
Virtually all other mammal species, when the young are born, right, they only hang around for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come out, they're already pretty independent. You know, they can toddle along behind her, or they can cling to her back as she wanders, or they can hang out in the den while she goes and gets food and brings it back.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks or a couple of months or whatever, off they go.
Independent.
Yep.
Know how to live their life.
They are. Mum is an empty nester. Woohoo. Hasn't taken long. Notice that I'm saying she. Mum,
Yeah.
mum, right? Because the dads aren't involved.
Yeah.
Right? In other mammal species, all you need the males for is to impregnate, and then they can just piss off because mum's got the rest.
Literally root and boot.
They do, root and boot, right? And the only
Come and
time,
gone.
the only time the female would let the male impregnate her, have sex with her,
Yeah.
is when she's in heat, i.e. she's fertile, right? And can be impregnated and create a baby. That is the only time she will let him. And it's the only time he's interested.
Okay.
He's not interested at any other time, right? And sometimes there's really obvious signs, you know, like those baboons whose bottoms swell up and turn blue. Hey, come and get me, big boy. Look at my big blue bottom. Otherwise, not interested, right?
Mating season.
Yes, right. You know, and there's all sorts of smells in the air and everyone's wanting to get it on, right?
The male birds are
We're not talking
shimmying.
about birds, though. We're talking about mammals.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Sorry.
My bad.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But a lot of the male mammals are like, they're fighting and they're strutting their stuff and they're, and a lot of them are sort of like, hey, I'm the man, I'm going to get the woman. And all the females are going like, yeah, off you go, do your thing. Yeah, like, okay, off you go. Right? But let's go back in time to when there were like primitive primates, right? And they were evolving to be, gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos. And one of those lineage was developing into Homo sapiens, which is us. Now, as the early hominids, the early Homo species were developing, their brains were getting bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger.
Bigger and bigger brains. And what happens when you have a bigger and bigger brain? You get a bigger and bigger skull.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. It's got to be big enough to fit our big brain. But those baby skulls have got to come out a fairly narrow opening to be born.
Yeah.
Right?
Ouch.
Yes. I mean, it's ouchy enough. No offense, darling. But it's ouchy enough as it is, right? If we were giving birth to babies as developed as other mammals, the frickin' heads would be this big, right? And the mothers wouldn't survive, right? We just wouldn't have survived in prehistoric days. So there was evolutionary pressure for us to give birth earlier and earlier, right? So as our brains got bigger, we gave birth earlier and earlier so that the infant would fit out the birth canal. Which meant by the time we get to Homo sapiens sapiens, which is us, a mere about 200,000 years or so ago, not that long in terms of evolutionary history, we were giving birth so early that our young are completely helpless.
Yeah, can't hold up their own neck.
Can't do anything. Seriously, cute as anything, fortunately. But completely hopeless. It takes around 7 years for a human infant to be where most mammal infants are at after a few weeks or months.
That's a long time.
That is a long time, right? And then it takes about another 7 years before they can reproduce.
That's
right?
it's a very long time.
That is a very long time for that basic evolutionary thing about life is that life is life because it procreates and keeps going, right? So that is a 14-year investment. And because the young are so helpless, a human female would not have been able to raise that child on her own in primitive times, right? Yeah, there's no government support for single mothers, right? So, there was evolutionary pressure on the fathers to hang around. So in human societies, we have this thing called fatherhood, right?
Cool.
Because if the men hung around and helped with the children, right, helped their offspring get to reproductive age, their genes would continue, right? So big myth bust number one of today's episode, men are not designed to spread their seed widely. That is one of the biggest myths. You often hear that, men are designed to, go around and root everything and women aren't. Utter bullshit. In fact, if anything, it's the other way around. Probably a topic for another day. Otherwise, I'm going to go all over the place here, right?
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, there's actually more logical evidence for women to be big rooters around than it is for men. But hang on, let's stick to the point here. So
Fatherhood,
right? So there was evolutionary pressure for the dads to hang around.
Yeah.
Right? So that they would have successful offspring who would then, reproduce and
continue on.
Yeah, right? Okay, so this is partly why humans evolved to be very social. We also get around in little packs and we all connect. There's a lot of family bonding and close friendships and we're very tactile and very social, right? Part of that social bonding and tactility is to be sexual.
Okay.
Right? So when people are having sex regularly, preferably with someone that they care for, right, they create more love. And when they create more love, they want to hang around. So this is just one theory, but I love this theory, right? Because I'm all about love as well. So the theory is that some early hominids started having sex not for procreation, not just when the female was in heat, right, but anytime because it feels good. And when it feels good, only when sex feels good, not when sex feels bad, right? But when I say sex, intimacy, connection, yumminess, deliciousness, when that feels good, oxytocin flows.
Mm.
And when oxytocin flows, we feel bonded and connected.
The bonding.
Yes.
Cool.
So we evolved to not show when we are fertile.
Oh, not at all.
Very, very minusculely.
Don't need it.
No, because that's not what it's about. Humans do not have sex to reproduce. Humans have sex to bond, right? We actually evolved through love.
Aww.
Yeah, because we can only look after those slow-growing young and keep it going if we're in love.
Yeah, and bonded.
And bonded.
For 14 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I just want to make a couple of little points here, if I may. That doesn't necessarily mean that we've always been monogamous or that we've always been pair bonded, right? Yeah. But pair bonding is so much part of virtually every culture ever studied, right? But the point is that when we have quality intimacy and connection with the people we love, whether that's with our families and our community and our tribe, and in particular, beautiful lovemaking with a person, I guess could be people, but let's say person that we love the most, we grow in love. And then we're loving to our children, and then they reproduce and have more children. And as far as we know, for most of human history, that's how humans interacted sexually. It was just this really beautiful, loving thing that people did, and there was a lot of equality, and women were seen as these miraculous creatures that created life and perpetuated life and suckled and nurtured. The earth was seen as a god, the earth mother who provided for us, and the feminine nurturing, supporting, like you were saying with your swimming,
with the ocean,
healing was considered primary.
Oh, hear that?
Yeah. So that's how we evolved, and that's how we were being sexual, as far as we can tell, for the vast majority of human existence until about the last 5,000 years.
What happened then?
What happened then? Oh, how much time have I got?
Think about 25 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So cut a long story short. The world got very crowded. People started staying in place, right? Agriculture was developed, intensive agriculture. There was a sense of this is mine and that's yours, because when you're stationary like that, big shifts in terms of how humans related to the earth and ownership and so forth, right?
Yeah.
But still, for most of that time, it still seems that, the goddess was the primary deity and people were in tune with the seasons and the land and all this sort of thing. But something happened about 5,000 years ago, and big shifts in societies. Fortifications are being built. It seems like for the first time there's war and like big battles and mass killings and this sense of, I want to take your land, I want to control you.
Right.
Yeah, invaders came. I won't go into that. It would take forever. And anyway, but what happened was this shift from, rather than being like
community.
Yeah, community and equality between the sexes, and possibly even, certainly women being at least equal, if not more equal, right? To a need for more of those kind of yang, masculine kind of qualities like power and strength and aggression and
protection
and all that sort of thing, right? So it seems that over time there was this shift away from what was probably more of a matrilineal way of seeing human society, where you follow the mother's line because it's always obvious who the mother is, to following the father's line. Became patrilineal, and then eventually patriarchy, where the men actually ruled. But when you have a patrilineal society, right, it's very tricky pre-DNA testing, because how is a man going to know that his wife's children are his?
Lock it down.
Lock her down.
Marry her.
Well, more than just marry her. Lock her down.
Yeah.
You've got to make damn sure that she can't have sex with anyone else.
Okay.
Yeah? I mean, that's the only way. Because if she's able to have sex with other people, then it might not be your child. Horrors.
Got to control them.
Got to control them, right? And so that's when they did things like, lock her up and never let her out, all sorts of, restraint type things. Yeah, so basically lock her up, restrain her in some way, So she can't have sex with others. And if she does, you can stone her to death.
Call her a witch.
Call her a witch and burn her at the stake. Yeah, call her mad and lock her up in an insane asylum.
Just for having sex.
Or wanting to.
Or wanting to have sex.
Yeah. Yes. But, and this is the really important one, and I think this attests to why we're so fucked up, right? That's to raise your girl children to think that they're not sexual and shouldn't be sexual.
Right.
Raise your girl children so they know nothing, right? And think that they shouldn't know anything, right? Even these days, whenever I talk in front of a group of women, right, I always say, hands up if your mother taught you about your clitoris. And I can tell you, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands. And I could probably count on one, possibly two hands. How many women in the audience have raised their hands? And you are one of them, my darling. Yeah? Interestingly, when I ask that at a sexology conference, we get way more people putting their hands up, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. That is interesting. It's almost like if you raise your daughters to know that they are sexual creatures, they'll become sexual creatures.
Yeah, in a positive way.
In a positive way.
Yeah. We spent the last some thousands of years on average raising our children. This is sort of based on the Western system, right? Other cultures didn't. Other cultures did all sorts of clever things. Unfortunately, the Western culture took over the whole world and brought with it its dysfunctional sexual practices. So basically girls were raised knowing nothing. And then on, their wedding night, they'd be told, darling, here's your sex education. You're about to be economically dependent on this man for the rest of your life. He has his needs, make sure they're met, and pop out a few offspring on the way to keep his family line going.
Right. It's a lot of pressure.
Well, a lot of ignorance. But I don't blame the men for this. I do want to stress that I do not blame men for patriarchy. Patriarchy and all oppressive type of hierarchical systems only benefit those at the top. So most men who are not at the top don't benefit, right?
Yeah.
Because they were also raised to think that somehow sex was bad, you shouldn't do it, right? So even if they were having a nice little bit of self-pleasuring, they'd be doing it quickly so mum doesn't catch me. They'd be feeling guilty and shameful and wondering if they were getting hairy palms and all this sort of nonsense, right? So they know nothing except masturbation. So boy meets girl, hopefully they fall in love, hopefully they have a nice time. She knows nothing, he knows masturbation. So guess what they do? He masturbates in her vagina, right? So it becomes... you have sex because you're horny. So that's step one. You got to be horny, right? And then because you're married, rather than having to do it yourself, you can do it inside her vagina.
Yes.
And you do it until he ejaculates. Right? Done. And that's how the model I talked about, the linear model that I talked about last episode, came into being because of centuries of sexual ignorance, of sexual oppression, of making out that sex is bad, and also that it's supposed to only be for procreation.
Yeah.
Even though, as I just explained, it's not for procreation, it's for connection.
Love.
It's for love, right? But if you can get in the way of a society's pleasure and connection, you can control them. And that's what happened for centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People were scared of usually God, right? Judging them morally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because part of what happened, although 5,000 years ago, was our gods developed to the point that instead of having the earth mother and the females in charge, to having, a mixture of male and female gods and stuff, to only having one male god. And that was a fucking asshole, patriarchal, dominant father type, Old Testament God, who is watching you and will smite you if you do anything bad, right? So it's sort of taken us some thousands of years to sort of be moving away from that to where we're actually at in society now, which has got an awful lot of good in it.
Yeah.
But we're still, certainly around our sexuality, really just trying to understand it.
Yeah, definitely.
And move away from, like, so many people know that there's some fucked up stuff going on. And often it's labelled, patriarchal attitudes, which I agree with. But too many people are trying to resolve it from within these patriarchal ways of viewing it, Like they're still sort of separating out sex and love and going, yes, no, championing pleasure and do what you like and anything is okay, without actually kind of looking at, well, hang on, why do we do it? What underpins it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And a lot of people are still buying into that linear model is the only model and therefore it's good for men and it's not good for women. And, why do men have more orgasms than women? And, it's not fair and, blah, blah, penises are bad and, vaginas are only there for the penis and it's the clitoris is the only thing that matters. And it's kind of like, oh, come on, people. Like, let's just chuck all of that away.
Yeah. Interesting. So it was like in the 60s, 70s when sex became good again?
Yeah, so there was sort of a lot of shifting last century. So actually believe it or not, a lot of the really big social change came about with the First World War. So that was 1915 to 1918.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah. So even though it was absolutely horrendous, like it was just the most awful war ever, and so many young men died. It was awful. But because so many men were dying or were out at war and stuff, is the women had to take over.
Yeah.
And fill a lot of the roles. So it's sort of the first time in society in more recent years that we actually see, women in the power. Now, sadly, after the war and when the men came back and so forth, the women had to go back to, the homes.
Yeah.
Right.
But they didn't like that.
Well, there was already a shift, I mean, before that we had the suffragettes and actually it was New Zealand and Australia who had the first time that women were allowed to vote, which was only 100 years ago. Yeah. But there was certainly a boost for that after the First World War, right, because women were more empowered. And then we sort of went back to sort of the old way a little bit, but then we had the Second World War and again, women had to come to the fore. After that, there was a reversion back in the 1950s. It was considered more, conservative and conventional, but those shifts were already happening.
Yeah, definitely.
In the first half of last century and actually towards the end of the century before, women were going to universities and, being educated. And when you educate women, if you want to suppress people, don't educate them. Don't let them know what their abilities and their power
Don't let them
is.
talk to each other.
Yeah.
Don't let women talk to each other in public. Make them wear face coverings.
Oh, yeah, let's not go there. But so that's why there's been all of this growth. So that by the mid-century last year, there was more research being done into sex. It was considered kind of a bit weird, but God, this is so interesting too. How long is this episode going to be? But there was some of the research that was being done in the middle of last century. They were discovering, shock, horror, that women were sexual. They were discovering that women had fantasies and women had more elaborate and complex fantasies than men, that women had wonderful orgasms. In fact, they had better orgasms than men.
Yeah, like female bodies are even more sexual than men.
Yes.
We'll get into that.
We're going to do another episode on that topic. But all this sort of stuff, and it was sort of coming out. And also we were getting information from Eastern cultures, like from the Tantra, from the India and Taoism from China, and they had much more positive views of sexuality, like really inspiring. And a lot of what I teach is based on that. So by the 60s and 70s, we've got this melange of like scientific information and esoteric and spiritual information and more freedoms, more empowerment. And that was when society was kind of like,
sex is good.
Yeah, and the pill came along as well, which to some extent took away the burden of, sex having to end up or could end up with pregnancy. So lots of good things happening around then.
But with the societal shift, there's still no one said why sex is good. It's just, it is good now, guys. Sex is good again.
Yeah. Off you go.
And everyone's like, okay, so.
So it used to be bad, but now it's good to be bad and it's bad to be good. Like,
yeah.
Bit of cognitive dissonance, bit of a head fuck.
And with it only being last century, it's still generationally inbuilt in a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So it's up to us.
Yes.
Guys, it's up to us.
Us being your generation.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and the people who are giving birth to children, it's up to us to break the cycle.
Yes, exactly.
Teach the kids why sex is good. To live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, how it's integrated with a fulfilling life.
Mm.
Kind of like what we're doing here.
Yes. Also kind of like how you raised me.
Kind of like how I raised you.
Very interesting. Makes a lot of sense when you break it down like that.
I think it does. And I think, it makes us realize that we're still pretty early in this shift and this waking up to what beautiful sex and intimacy is. It really is the forefront of a new wave. So if you are feeling confused or whatever, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's normal. There's not many people doing what we're doing right now and talking about it in this way and
sex education.
Getting the message out there. So
and I also think it's interesting how when our society moved from focusing on love as the priority to land and food security, that's when the idea of sexuality had to become all fucked up in order to prioritize that.
Yeah.
But now we're moving back to prioritizing love.
Yes.
And that's how.
Yeah. Well, see, when a society goes beyond just needing to focus on the basics of survival, that's when you have higher order human experiences happening, like, art and culture and, good things like that. So we have space. We're not sort of, we shouldn't be being run by our adrenal glands and stress.
Yeah.
Sadly, too many people's lives in our modern life are being run by stress, even though we don't need to, because it's almost like that primal need to survive and to worry and everything. It's been drilled into us over the last 5,000 years, people.
Yeah.
It's hard to move away from. Like so many of my clients, it's sort of like, how? How do I stop stressing? What is it to feel relaxed?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's mad that we really do live in such a privileged society with so much goodness and education and possibilities, but we're still drilled in. You got to worry.
Stressed,
You got to worry. You got to stress. You got to stress. So, yeah.
But yeah, just essentially you got to focus on love, guys.
Yeah.
Got to focus on love and connecting through pleasure.
Yes.
Then you will live like our primitive forefathers.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that shows that they actually had really good lives.
Yeah.
They actually lived longer. They had a more varied diet. Look at their skeletons. They're healthy. It wasn't sort of this terrible existence that sometimes we think it was. It was actually when agriculture came along, then we had a more limited diet and we lived in one space. That's when the skeletons get smaller and don't live as long and have more illnesses. Yeah, interesting stuff.
I would just love, if I could go in a time machine, I just want to know how they're having sex. You know what I mean? I just want to know what their view is.
Well, can I share something with you?
Yeah.
I heard this and I can't remember where I heard it from. It was years and years ago that in some of the Pacific islands, which was one of the last places to be taken over by, the
colonizers,
the sexually repressive West, and totally shocked the repressive West when they saw some of the behaviors, like they were just so free and loving around their sexuality and uninhibited. Apparently, one of the things they would teach their children was if you happen to be walking along and you see a couple having sex, just sit down and masturbate for a while until it's over.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Like for us Westerners, that just seems, what the fuck? Yeah.
Just walking along.
Yeah.
Bang one out.
Yeah, there they are having a nice time. So have a nice time yourself. Why not? Right? Like how comfortable must a society be to be able to say that to their children? And how far is that from where we're at?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's illegal.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all illegal. Just, yeah. And I'm not necessarily saying that we should be saying that or doing that necessarily, but, I'm really just talking about the level of comfort.
Yeah. And freedom to express yourself.
Yeah. I think that's enough for now.
Yeah.
But I am curious if anyone has any questions that they'd like me to elaborate on or, feel free to challenge as well if you think that's a load of crap and whatnot. Yeah, I love it. Love a good debate. So, so feel free. Also, this is not the word of God. This is just what I've managed to piece together after a lifetime of examining all of these issues and trying to make sense of it myself.
And I guess there's also there's a lot of hope.
There is a lot of hope. That's what a lot of my clients say. I don't want to big time myself here, but, so often people have been to, other therapists or whatever, and they go, oh, my God, it's all so depressing and don't know what to do. And they come and have sessions with me and they're like, In fact, generally that is what people say at the end of their first session.
Aww.
I have hope. I have hope. We have hope.
I think you deserve to toot your own horn if that's how you're making people feel.
Oh, thanks, darling.
It's okay. That's all right.
No.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to know about the bad in order to focus on the good.
Absolutely. Absolutely you do.
And hopefully from
Yeah.
hearing about the history of sex, you can
Yeah.
give yourself a little bit of a break.
Oh, give yourself a break. Let's give all of ourselves a break.
We've got the whole of 5,000 years of sexual oppression behind us.
We do.
It's tricky to let go of it. But
Yeah.
you can do it. I believe in you.
Yes. We believe in you.
Keep practicing love, love, pleasure, and connection.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh.
that's a good way to end that section.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't, because you've told me that story so many times, I can't even remember the first time I've heard it. So I am really curious to hear what you guys think of that
Yeah.
and where you take this information and how it affects your life. Because there are a lot of times just outside of sex, even just like in my workplace or whatever, I'm like, you guys just don't know that this all just comes down to agriculture. You don't know that we're having this issue because of agriculture.
Well, it wasn't just agriculture, to be fair. Like agriculture came along 10,000 years ago, but the shift didn't happen until 5,000 years ago. So there was something about crowdedness, population growth. Look, there is some talk about, and look, I'm not an expert on it, but that there were some tribes in the Stans area, you know, that area of Central Europe, Asia, and they developed chariots and riding horses, and for whatever reason they became quite warlike, and they were the ones that sort of spread across.
Well, it's just when it sounds like it's just when people started like giving a hierarchy to social order.
Yes.
Your land is better, therefore I deserve it because I'm better than you are.
Yeah, and I'm going to take it over, and then I'm going to be in charge of you. And
yeah. No space for sex and sexuality.
And that's kind of been the history of like the whole of the planet for the last 5,000 years. Like people have been doing this all over the planet, like it's spread. You know, this whole colonizing thing, it's not something that just happened recently with the Europeans. Like
people have been wanting other people's stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
So, segment 3.
Oh, yes.
Got some questions.
Questions. Thank you for your questions.
All right. I'm going to start off with a lighthearted.
A lighthearted one. Okay.
Yes. So this is from Instagram.
Mm.
Ask me anything. And this person, one word question.
Oh.
Swinging.
Swinging.
No question mark. Just the word swinging.
Okay. Everything you wanted to know about swinging in a 1-minute answer. Look, like any sexual activity is totally fine as long as it's done consensually and sanely. Right? And what I mean by sane is you don't want to do anything that's going to cause, death or permanent harm or anything like that. But otherwise, if it's consensual, if you and your beloved want to swing, then sure, why not? So note down for another episode how to expand your sexual play safely and deliciously. So with swinging, like with any kind of expanding of your sexual play, you need to talk about it with your partner, talk about what your desires are, what your fears are, make sure that you've got some mutual understanding and that you can support each other if you're engaging and one or the other of you kind of goes, whoa, hang on, that's enough. So that you've got like an out strategy that is supportive. Remember, when it comes to something like swinging, you're doing it to enhance your couple bond, your couple experience.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to be serving the couple. If one person's having a great time and the other person isn't, you stop.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to always support the couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. One word question. Another one from Instagram.
Yeah.
How to increase libido as menopause has killed it and androfem doesn't work.
All right. Libido, I think we've covered in episode 1, actually means life force energy. And so when you're getting into your life force and actually, like the change of life, and this applies to men in the andropause as much as women in the menopause, there's a lot of shifts happening physiologically but also psychologically. right? There's less ahead than there was before. What is the meaning of it all? Where have I got to? What is it all about? That's a lot of what's going on. So sort that sort of stuff out and start doing more of what you enjoy, a little bit like how Claude shared with the swimming,
Yeah.
right? So look, it's a lot about that, like feeling good within yourself and understanding that you also have more power now. So you have the power to say, no, I don't want that. And a lot of people, particularly women at this phase of life, will be like, oh, fuck that. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not doing that shit.
Yeah.
So it's really a time to really pay attention to these podcasts so that you learn how you can identify, what do I really want?
Yeah.
What kind of intimacy do I want with my beloved? Is that person even my beloved? Like, am I feeling that? How can we generate more of that beloved feeling? How can I want to go, yes, I want to connect with you in a certain way? And what is that certain way? It's probably not just that boring linear model, right? So this is a time to be really creative and like, what does feel good? Getting in touch with that inner GPS of pleasure and connection, right? Again, I think we need to do a whole episode or more
just menopause.
On menopause, because there are so many myths
Writing it down.
around menopause. Can I tell you, it can just be the best time of life, and what comes after is like, hey, it's good.
Yeah, I'm currently reading a book right now. I'll put it in the show notes because I cannot remember what it's called. But it's all about getting to know your cycle and getting in touch with your cycle and stuff. And she talks about how in your menstruating years, you're learning about yourself and what does and doesn't serve you. And then when you're going through menopause, that's when you get to live out those things that you learned during your menstruating years. So you are like coming into that power that you spent all those years creating.
Yeah. Like there's 4 phases of life. There's the maiden, that's when you're very young. And then there's what's called the mother years traditionally, but it's not just about birthing children. That's part of it for many women, but also birthing your life and, and your work and who you are. Those are the middle years. And then when you stop menstruating, that's when you come into, your wise woman. That's when you're powerful, that phase of life, which, I'm in. It's such a powerful phase of life. And then there may well be, if you live long enough, the last phase of your life when you really do, withdraw and you're just a nice, happy little old lady. Yeah. But certainly for us modern women, that last phase, it comes later because we're healthier and happier and in the postmenopause or in the wise woman, powerful phase, that can last a long time. Yeah.
You're definitely in that phase. Observationally, I can tell.
Thank you, darling.
Okay, this question kind of relates to the episode. But it is there any kinky stuff in history?
Is there kinky stuff in history?
Yes.
Well, and again, I think we need to do an episode on kink.
Okay, wow.
Right.
Guys, we've got so many episodes coming your way.
We have a lot of episodes coming up. But look, it's interesting. And partly it comes down to what is your definition of kink, because sometimes kink is just defined as anything that isn't that boring linear model or that boring linear, particularly, man on top, like we don't even look at each other and just do our thing, vanilla. Actually, that kind of lovemaking can be the most beautiful kind of lovemaking. I mean, there is a reason why vanilla is the most popular flavor of ice cream, right? But it doesn't have to be boring. So whether you're talking about kink as being something other than just really boring vanilla sex, and as I said, not all vanilla sex is boring. Depends how you engage. But in terms of like playing with power roles or the edge of pleasure and pain or dressing up or role playing, I mean, all these other things that we can do to bring into our sexual activity, sure, call that kinky if you want. People have been doing this sort of thing forever. Like it's fun. Yeah, sex is supposed to be playtime for grown-ups. Right? Now, there are some interesting things which we can explore in more detail about how often people kind of fetishize their shame and then they get a charge off that in a kinky way. So again, a little bit like I was saying about the swinging. Anything that you're doing that is done in a positive way, a consensual, pleasurable way is fine. Call it kinky if you want. Call it expanded sexual play, whatever you like. And yeah, sure. People have been having pleasurable sex of all sorts for forever.
What's your definition of kink?
What's my definition of kink? Oh, that's
This
putting
is
me
a
on the
Claudia
spot.
question.
This is a Claudia question. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to think about that because I personally, our society loves to have categories at the moment. Everyone's putting categories on all sorts of things. And for me, it's kind of like there is no category. It's just what do I as an individual enjoy engaging in? Who am I and what's my individual sexuality, right? I don't like all these labels we have around sexuality these days. I think there's either one, human, or 8 billion, which is our individual.
Yeah. So you don't really use kinky as a word?
No, even the 7 flavors of sex I talk about, which we will do an episode on, I don't use the word kinky in there. I actually differentiate between playful because a lot of people do playful kinky kind of stuff and wicked, which is a different way of engaging with those kind of more kinky type activities.
Yeah, I guess you could just define kink as like a sexual preference.
I suppose, but then again, what is your definition of kink?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because I think mine is kind of more in that BDSM-y realm, like specific kind of naughty types of things. But I guess that is also sexualizing shame because it's naughty.
Well, it does in a way, yeah.
Interesting.
So,
maybe I don't even think kinky is a word either.
Yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, because I guess BDSM would be enough to describe BDSM.
Well, yes.
You don't need to add kinky as a word into it.
Because if you think about kink means not straight. So it's sort of we're dividing sex into straight and not straight. So, again, there's all these kind of dichotomies, which I personally don't think are very helpful. Personally, I don't think they're very helpful. Yeah. But look, if it's a word that works for you, then use it. Like, hey, but if you're using it, just be aware of what you mean by it.
Yeah.
And make sure that the people you're talking to are aware of what you mean by it. Yeah.
Cool.
I think we've got how much? One more question?
One more question.
Yeah.
Is this Tantra what you're teaching here?
Is this Tantra? Essentially, yes.
What is Tantra?
Yes, and again, a topic for a full episode. Yes, but in terms of how we tend to use the term Tantra these days, I mean, Tantra is actually this huge spiritual system developed in India in the ancient times. But there were elements of that have come that address sexuality, and there are certain sexual practices and so forth. But it's very much about mindfulness, about embodiment, about very present. So those are some of the elements that we've learnt from some of those tantric practices. And that is generally taught in it's actually neo-tantra because it really doesn't have that much to do with ancient tantric practices. In fact, a lot of it has got nothing to do with it. But hopefully some of those are the pure spiritual, mindful presence, love coming through. So yeah, essentially, yes. Essentially, what I'm sharing with you here is the essence of Tantra.
The tantric approach.
It's the tantric approach. And we will go into that in another episode.
Guys, so many episodes.
There's so much for me to share with you. So please make sure you're subscribed to this.
Yes, subscribed, notifications on, click that little bell, and I will love you forever if you also rate it 5 stars.
Oh, yes, please do that as well.
Please do that. It keeps it up in the Spotify recommendation algorithm, and I want this podcast to be recommended to everyone because I want everyone to have a good sex life.
Yes.
And also just a good life.
Yeah. We're also on iTunes and TuneIn now as well.
Oh my God, we're on iTunes and TuneIn.
Yeah, we fixed the glitch.
Woohoo! So that's the end of this episode.
It is.
A good one. That was a lot of Jacqueline talking. How's your throat feeling?
Oh, my throat's fine. I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
She's a yapper.
I'm a yapper.
Yeah, but it was good. It was nice.
It was, and you moderated it beautifully, darling.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So if you want to see us in the flesh, well, it's kind of not in the flesh. I guess it's on the computer screen.
Yeah, on the computer screen.
If you want to see us in the flesh on the computer screen, you can watch these podcast episodes on YouTube. Jacqueline Hellier's YouTube account. That is Jacqueline with JACQUELINEHELLYER.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. You can also follow us on Instagram. If you have any questions, I have a little AMA box, which is Ask Me Anything.
Ooh.
I think Fridays, on the weekends usually. So if you want to ask a question, you can wait for the weekend story upload, or you can just shoot us the DM. I'm all over that. But if you want some more of my mum, Where can they find you?
Well, I have an Instagram account, Jacqueline.Hellier, or my website, www.jacquelinehellier.com, which has got all the information on my clinic, on retreats, online courses, and all my socials are available there as well.
Lots of learning on JacquelineHellier.com.
Lots of learning.
Coolly. Our intro and outro song was created by Paul Seals.
Go, Paul.
Has just released a new album, which is also linked in the show notes. Till next time, guys.
Yeah.
Hope you love your life.
Love life.
Your little lovers. Little lovers of
love life. So much love.
We'll see you next Wednesday/Thursday. Love you. Bye.